Hello, friends. How are you? How is everything going today?
Hey
I
everybody.
could hear myself in double because I forgot to turn down the volume on the stream itself. We're starting, we're starting exactly the way I want to start. But welcome everyone to this fun little chat with myself and Monty about the Darkest House. Um, I have told you who we are, but let me introduce myself properly. My name is LaTia Jacquise. I am the community relations coordinator for Monte Cook Games. Most of the time, if you're talking to somebody on social media, it is me. And I am joined here today by Monty. Tell everybody who you are, as if they don't know.
I've legally changed my last name to Games now, so it's hyphenated, Monte Cook Games. Yeah, I'm Monty, designed the Darkest House, um, and so I'm sure I owe all your players an apology, but they're not getting it.
Yes, if you are here to beg forgiveness for the acts that you have done to your players, this is not the place for it. We are here to make it worse. So I know that we don't have our names here, but they're in the captions. But my pronouns are she, her, just in case.
Yeah, I'm him.
And this is just going to be a fun little chat with myself and Monty and you all as Monty spills the beans about the Darkest House and really whatever we want to, but mostly the Darkest House.
Yeah, I thought um, I would share a few ideas that I had specifically aimed at people who are going to run this as the game master. Right up front, I'm going to say if you're watching this and you're going to play in the Darkest House, there's probably going to be tons of spoilers, and I'm not even going to try to worry about that kind of stuff. So, Darkest House, obviously, is this environment that the player characters are going to enter into from whatever game world they happen to be in, and kind of taken into the house space to help showcase the fact that the house is like a separate space, a separate entity. We've got the house system. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. But I want to start out talking about what I think is the most important part about adventuring in the Darkest House, and that's the characters that are going in. The Darkest House is all about uh, sort of deepening your character. If a traditional sort of D&D style dungeon is all about going down and getting loot. Um, the Darkest House is about sort of expanding character, although the players don't know that when they go in. But you will find as you peruse the rooms of the Darkest House that there are lots of opportunities for people to think about their characters, perhaps in ways that they haven't ever thought about them before. Anything from what kind of nightmares they have, to things that might have happened to them in their childhood, to their deepest fear, to their greatest wish, to all these kinds of things, because the house itself plays on that stuff and focuses on it. And so as the GM, like, character sort of trumps everything. It is going to be, it's more important than the combats that might happen. It's more important than any of that other kind of stuff that you might have in a more traditional role playing game setting.
Yeah. That's why the conversion when you go through the process of converting the characters from whichever system that you're going to, you know, transition from, it's a bigger focus on, not so much their stats and their point values and things like that, but it's, what can they do, and then a little bit more into the history and backstory of them.
Right, right. You're just kind of capturing the essence of them with the conversion system. And that's very intentional. In a way, So yeah, I mean, let's talk about the mechanics a little bit and whatnot, because the house system is designed specifically to kind of strip away a lot of the complex rules that you might have in other games, to just kind of get them out of the way in order to really focus on character and
Mhm,
mood and story. Um, but here's the real thing, right? I mean, if you don't want to convert to the house system, if you're playing your Pathfinder game or your Cypher System game or whatever, and you love those rules and you don't want to convert all your characters, don't. The house system is first and foremost meant to be, I mean, I think I even kind of referred to it as a Rosetta Stone, so that and the Rosetta Stone works both ways, right? And so you can convert your characters to the house system, or you can convert the house system to your characters. And the only thing to keep in mind, if you're not going to use the house system, is that there needs to be something in the mechanics of whatever you're using that reflects the purpose of the house die and calling upon the house, and therefore getting a doom. Those are pretty important to the play of the game. So you want to have something so that uh, you know every time the characters take something, try to do something, and they take their dice and they're getting ready to roll them, you want them to kind of have a little tiny bit of dread. Oh no, what if the house acts because I rolled the dice? And that that aspect of dread and building dread, right? Because the house acts and it moves along a track, is really integral to kind of establishing the mood, and the nature of the house, and of course, the idea of gaining doom by calling upon the house, is a fantastic thing, particularly if you're playing this as part of a long running campaign,
mhm.
because you'll leave the house. If the characters leave the house with dooms, it's going to affect them for a really long time, and it's going
Yeah.
to bring upon whole new adventures. And you know I don't know, they're going to have to go talk to someone to exorcist or something.
Yeah, the Darkest House works really good as a one shot. I've done it myself. We built level 5 D&D characters to convert to the house system and then throw them in the house, but it works a lot better when they can leave the house, can in massive quotations, because will they ever get out? Who knows? But when they are able to leave the house and take those actions and those consequences with them through the rest of their game.
For sure, yeah. You know they'll you know they'll come out probably a little scarred, maybe physically, maybe mentally, but that just leads to interesting role playing situations, and a deeper kind of character. So I think that um, is the reason behind the mechanics. That's what the mechanics are for. And so as long as you've got some aspect of doom and some aspect of the house taking actions based on player actions, I think you're good to use whatever system you want. The
Yeah.
house system, however, is really simple. Uh, I've I have always done the conversion. I've never run. That's not entirely true, but for the most part, I've always done the conversion, and people are kind of at first, because it's a new system, right? People are like, I don't know, but it's so simple and straightforward that I
It
people get
is.
used to it really quick.
I am gonna take this opportunity, since we're talking about the house system, to ask one of the questions that has been asked both in chat and has been it was submitted through our form. And I will admit to being confused about it as well.
Okay.
So both I don't actually have the names of who submitted to the form, but Thormoy in chat asked, um, the way that the house acts, it's always the house die has to be higher than any other die rolled, right? It
Correct.
like so it's not like in D&D where if you meet it, you beat it. It has to be the highest.
Right.
Okay.
The house
So,
die has to be the highest die that just got rolled. Yes.
okay. So
Well,
if you
there's
go
a
ahead.
there is a very fine point there. It has to be the highest die of the dice that get used.
Right.
So if you have a Bane, so you're rolling 3 dice and you're only using the two lowest, you're only
Hmm.
going to look at the two lowest, compare it to the house die.
Right.
So that's why Banes are even scarier
Or
than
even scarier.
yeah,
But like if on the die that you are rolling, you have like a 4 and a 5, and then the house die is a 5, the house does not act.
correct.
So there you
Okay,
go. So yes, if it met like a matching number does not count. The house die has to be the highest.
right.
Thormoy also says, thanks, have been loving the house so far. Wow, my players are terrified. All but one left the house with doom, and they're afraid of going through any doors on the outside world.
Nice, nice. That's awesome.
Oh, what's up, Gwydion? That's I figure it was you that asked the question in the on the chat on the forum. So there you go. Um,
Let's talk about pacing.
yeah, let's
Um,
do that.
I pretty much anytime that I write anything that is aimed toward uh, game mastering and game mastering advice and whatnot, I will almost always say something to the effect of pacing is the most important thing that a game master can master. And I'm going to say it again here because in the Darkest House, you will go a long, long way to achieving the mood and the horror and the dread and everything that you want to achieve if you pay a lot of attention to pacing. So, what I would really recommend is as the players are creeping through the darkest house and they're, creepy stuff is happening and noises and whatnot, um, go just like a tiny bit slower than you would normally, right? Give your descriptions just a little bit more flourish, have some pauses in there so that it's kind of this slow creeping thing. But then once something happens, once, one of the horrible denizens of the house begins to, comes on scene or whatever, then move faster. Move faster than you normally would. Just kind of quickly asking for actions from the players and whatnot, and the players, whether they realize that you're doing that specifically or not, just that kind of action will begin to change the mood, right? And so, like, if they're going up the grand staircase and they're making their way and they're looking out the window that's on the landing there and it's creepy and you're just kind of talking slowly and describing things and stressing the darkness and the creepy stair or the creaky stairs, but then you go, I guess from there it's into the melting room, the with all the wax and the wax woman and everything. Like when she starts to act, you're just like, okay, and you're just saying, okay, LaTia, what do you do? Okay, and you're just like going really, really fast. Like everyone will get a little stressed out
Jittery. Yeah.
in a good way, though, right? Right? It's
Yeah.
just like, right.
It's
I
the equivalent of putting an hourglass on the table. Like you haven't like given them that time limit, but you know that like if you don't act fast, something bad is going to happen.
The other thing that is great, specifically about the darkest house, and slowing down the pacing, is that you're going to find, particularly when you first start, that you're clicking on the links for the images or the direct messages, and you're copying pasting it somewhere that the players can see it and whatever. And it can be until you get really, really used to it, it can kind of slow you down, but no one will notice that you're slowing down because of that if you're already kind of going a little slower anyway, right? And it's so if you do that, like, if you're having to take a couple of extra moments because you're sending one player some DMs that are, disturbing or whatever, instead of everyone getting impatient, they'll get creeped out, right?
Mhm.
And wow, I really, really recommend that the stuff that is, where we have written out the DMs for you, to really use that it I mean, it just freaks people out when suddenly some other player is just suddenly saying things like, do you guys hear that? What's going, and they're reacting to stuff, to information that you don't have,
Mhm.
right? Because, remember, in an RPG, like, it's everything is about information, right? Everything, the GM is just giving information, and if you don't have information, then you kind of feel helpless, right? Or panicked, or whatever. And so, if suddenly, one of the other players is got details that you don't have, then you feel like, oh no, why don't I know this? What's going on? And that, I think that's a great moment in the game, and can have that happen a lot in the darkest.
Absolutely. It can also cause discord between the players as well because it's like, how do you know this information? What do you know about the house that we don't? Are you working with the house? Like depending on how far into the house that they've gotten.
Right, right. Like it's like the so they're really, if you start at the front door and go in, really early encounter is the one where you go into the big room, um and it's endless, and you got to find the trick to get out of the room, and there's this little girl ghost, and she's talking to a player, and it's very intentional the way that room is designed, that all of her whispers, all of her direct messages go to one player,
Mhm.
um so that, like, by the, as that's going on, like, the other people are going to start to think that, like, that the person who's getting those messages is just going crazy, right?
Mhm.
And it's the darkest house, so maybe they are, right? Maybe there is no ghost in that room,
Right.
and it's just their own mind playing tricks on them.
We have a couple more questions in chat, so I'm going to
Mhm.
go in reverse order. So, Tierden asks, how would you say is the best way to use the familiar room? Also, should it be important to one PC or all of them?
So, um if you're playing the darkest house as a one shot, the familiar rooms are just kind of like, oh, that's weird, kind of
Hmm.
encounter. If you're playing it as a campaign, like, so that the characters have lives outside the darkest house, um the familiar rooms are my favorite thing in the whole house, because you go into this room, and everything seems familiar, and you think, like, every time that I've run the darkest house, the players have just assumed, oh, the house is like reading my mind, and it's creating a duplicate of this room that I am familiar with. And then they leave the house, and they go back to that place, and they find out that room is actually gone, right?
Hmm.
It no longer exists there.
Yeah.
And they realize, oh, that really was, you know my old
Yeah.
bedroom, or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Um,
I
I would
love
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I love the idea of a player accidentally grabbing a room. Like we asked, so when I GM the Darkest House, when I GM uh players running through the Darkest House, I will always ask them about a room that is, familiar to them or specific to them. But I love the idea of a player accidentally grabbing a room that is important to all of the characters. Like, so like it's like the very first tavern that they met in, or the throne room where they received accolades for their last big adventure, only to exit the house and find the kingdom in turmoil because where has the throne room gone?
I love that. I think that if you if you're running a campaign where there is a room that is important to everyone, I think that at least one. I mean, there are three familiar rooms, right? And I think at least one of them ought to be a room like that, a room that's important to everybody. Um, but it's also, to go back to what we were talking about before, right? It's also an interesting character building. You're reaching into a character's past, and you're like, oh, this is my childhood bedroom, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
where I slept as a kid, and here's the toy that I used to love or whatever. And it begins to kind of play off of that aspect of, well, and kind of fleshing out their background a little bit more too.
Another question that we had was from karaoke host QA. Is there a way to create a character for the Darkest House if you're not playing any other games?
No. uh there is no like house system character creation. You pretty much have to convert an existing character. That said, um it once you've converted a character, it would be really easy to just create one, right? It would be really easy once you kind of get the idea that, oh, I'm converting my third tier cipher system character, and this is what this is kind of where they ended up. Um, they're rating 5 overall, and the things that they're good at are rating 6 and whatever. Uh, it becomes pretty straightforward. Oh, okay. I could just make a character, right? That
Mm-hmm.
is rating 5, give them, 3 skills or whatever that they're rating 6 at, and, a couple of, important bits of equipment or whatever. Like, it's so simple, you kind of can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And, and I would say if you're going to do that, like, I think the sweet spot for the Darkest House is probably around rating 4, maybe 5.
Mhm.
Lower than that, like hopefully the trip in the house will be short, because it's going to be really difficult. If you're rating 1 or 2 particularly, like, you should just hide from everything and just try to get out as quickly as you
As
can.
quickly as possible, yeah. Let's see. We had a techie question that I can answer really quickly. I don't know where it went, but the question was, will there ever be an offline version of the house? Like being able to download everything so that you can run it offline. And the answer to that question is no, unfortunately. The way that we've built it, it has to be online to run. So sorry, but we'll think about that for next time. Next time we do something like this. Uh, I
Yeah,
think we're
that's an
go ahead.
interesting point. Like I certainly would be interested to find out, and people can talk about it in chat, or they can send us customer service messages or whatever. But I would be very interested to hear from people who've used the Darkest House as an app, and would like to see something like this done for some other game, right? That isn't necessarily a haunted house, right? You could use this format to do anything, right?
Hmm.
You could make a dungeon, you could make a strange land you have to explore, or whatever.
Hmm.
Anything that's sort of exploration focused.
Yeah. Reminds me of a little bit. Reminds me of Mind Maze from the Encarta 95 disc. My favorite, one of my absolute favorite things about that disc was the labyrinth of trivia that I got to explore. So, and anything like that is wonderful to me, which is one of the reasons why I like The Darkest House so much. All right, I got some more questions.
Okay.
Let's see, we've answered that. So I'm gonna, this one is, oh, this is a very good one. If you're in chat, you can let me know if you asked this one because unfortunately, the way I did the form means that I don't know who asked what. Can you give some examples of avatars of a player's greatest fear when it's something more intangible or something that can't be easily represented as a single creature? This question is particularly important to the devoured halls, but folks running the vanilla house might appreciate the advice as well.
Right. So um I think you can go a couple of different ways. Like uh you know, I'll just pull some weird examples out of like I can imagine a rather uh ephemeral or esoteric sort of fear that isn't like, I'm afraid of bugbears. Is, I'm afraid of my greatest fear is letting my friends down,
Hmm.
right? And that could manifest in a lot of ways. Like, for example, uh, that could manifest as a it can manifest as an entity that like specifically negates the character's ability to do what they do best to help out their friends, right? Like if you've got a character with healing powers or whatnot, and their greatest fear is letting down their friends, it takes away their healing power, for a while or something. That would be a really interesting manifestation of that kind of fear. It could be just simply uh like the the dwarven fighter loses their axe, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it can be something sort of as simple and straightforward as that, because just think about how much that will affect uh that that character and that player. Like I don't know, LaTia, give me another example of like a hard to nail down, like a
Oh, well, this person actually included some examples.
okay, great.
So examples of like the fear of having dementia as they get older, or being abandoned, or being completely alone. Those are some of the examples that they
Oh,
got.
those are fantastic, right? Like the fear of abandonment could literally be like, or being left alone, right? Is the character, encounters something that literally takes them away from the rest, their friends, and teleports them somewhere else in the house, right? Or maybe, just sort of like renders all their friends invisible and intangible, or renders them invisible and intangible so that they can't interact with their friends in any way. And they're just stuck there, uh, um, you know, trying desperately to be heard, trying desperately to, um, take actions. And, by the way, what I would do in that situation absolutely is I would mute that person and, make them do everything via DM. Um, that would be that would be fun. But I'm mean, right? I should preface that by saying I'm a very mean person.
All right. It was a very good question.
Mhm.
Let's see. We've got questions from all over the place. I'm looking at like three different windows of questions right now.
Understood.
Um, oh, there was one in chat that I loved just because of the idea of going back into the house. Alex Gray 42 asked, "Is there a way to remove the dooms by returning to the house, such as with the red demon that is connected to the blood/pain fountain?"
Cool. Um, So right now, I'm running a Darkest House game, and the the idea is that the characters sort of they're originally from a just kind of a standard medieval fantasy world. They go into this house. They're just like, I don't know. They're looking for some kind of treasure or something, right? And they discover it's way more than they thought, and they just want to get out of there and leave. And they do. And so two of the players decide, you know what? I'd really like to explore the house completely. The house has a lot of mysteries. I want to go back in and just find out what's going on in that house. And one of the players didn't want to. And so what we did was we advanced time like 30 years.
Whoa.
And it's now 30 years later, and the two who uh, want to, the two characters of the players that wanted to go back have kind of created this idea that they have to go back. Like the house has permanently scarred them, i.e., their dooms, and they have to, kind of feel like they've got to get some closure, or they'll be forever haunted by the aspects of the house, and that are manifesting because of the doom that they left with. And um one of the things that I did, just as a bit of flavor, is in their original sort of foray into the house, they found the dog Buddy, and they managed to get Buddy out.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
and then so during our 30-year advance the timeline kind of thing, um, one of the players, the character who kind of went off and doesn't ever want to go back to the house, he's the one that took Buddy. And the other two characters, when they get together and they're like, we got to go back to the house. I don't want to, but clearly it's the only way to get rid of these dooms. Buddy, who should not still be alive, right? It's been
Uh-huh.
30 years. Buddy just showed up and is just like comes, and sits down at their feet, right? And they take that as a sign that that means they definitely have to go back to the house and everything. So
Oh,
anyway,
man.
I am totally behind the idea of going back to the house to get rid of the dooms, and I would do exactly something along the lines of what the person suggested, as I would designate whatever seems appropriate. Like for these players, they want to like find out what's really going on in the house, so they're going to have to go like to the original house, and they're going to have to, I don't know if they're going to have to necessarily like shut the house down the way you can, but they're going to have to at least go to the original house and kind of see what happened, and kind of see that the house became much more than it originally was.
Mhm.
That's
That's
how they would
awesome.
get rid of their dooms.
Cool, cool. That's
Sorry,
awesome.
long-winded game story, but
No, I love that. I mean, I have a huge soft spot for Buddy as a dog person and as someone who during playtests we found him.
that's right.
So
That's right.
absolutely love that idea. Um, let's go. Here's a question from Sean, our Sean.
Uh,
He says, "What is the first Darkest House encounter you ran that really scared the players and made you realize, yes, this is working?" Like, what was the encounter that made you realize that this was you had done the game that you had wanted to create?
um, so that's kind of that. I'm trying to figure out a way to answer that without giving you a really long-winded answer. But so the Darkest House came to be, the birth of the Darkest House as a thing came to be as I was running an Invisible Sun campaign a long time ago, and um, it uh, the sort of the room, it had the form it took was a little different. I modified it for this presentation, but it was the room where where the player characters found the telephone. right? Because they, you just you hear this ringing, right? And you're not sure what it is, you're not sure where it's coming from, and you're following the sound, and it's getting louder and louder as you pass through these rooms, and you finally find, that it's this old-timey kind of telephone, and you pick it up, and you begin hearing things, and it's there's something on the other end that's talking to you, and the players really freaked out at that, and I knew that was the moment that we were really onto something.
Oh, very good. Right. Charles says that he's pretty sure Sean played in that campaign, so he knows the answer to that question.
Sean did play in that campaign, but he probably didn't know that was my
The
my.
catalyst. Also, camera, come on. I don't want to be blurry. Come on, camera. I believe in you. Let's see. More questions. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. In both sessions where I've GM'd the Darkest House, I found that my players became somewhat reluctant to explore the rooms, with some players actively voicing their fear of explorations due to significant risks of repercussions with the house die. Do you have any suggestions for how to encourage player exploration and engagement, and specifically how to do this with players who like to get into the statistical probabilities of the dice rolls?
um, well, I think so. There's a couple of different things, right? One is, it's sort of a situation of, well, okay, you don't want to explore. You're in the, I don't know, you're in the library. You don't want to explore. You're afraid of what's going to happen. So what are you going to do, right? What are your alternatives? You don't really have any. And so what I would do is I would try to funnel that reluctance into careful action, right? Like, okay, we have to do this thing. Let's just go about it very, very carefully. Let's be wary. Let's, take precautions. Let's do the things, whatever. Even if it's on like the meta game level of let's roll the dice as few times as possible, right? um and from the GM's point of view, don't worry about it, because they'll right, that's a problem that fixes itself.
Yeah.
uh the house will make them roll some dice by moving around in it. And the other thing that I would do is, it becomes really pretty clear, I think, that the house acting is, it's not the end of the world, right? It is, something scary will happen, something maybe kind of bad will happen, but until you get to the point where it triggers one of the house entities actually showing up, um it, it's not like, oh, I roll the house axe, oh, I die now, right? That isn't going to happen, and that isn't what the house actions do. And uh and I'll also point out, and again, the players aren't going to know this until they figure it out, but just about every single one of the house entities, you can just run
Hmm.
and they don't follow you. So, you know, the house die, it's meant there for dread, it's meant there for mood and everything, but it's not going to spell certain doom, right? It's not a death spiral kind of
Exactly.
aspect.
And there's no opportunity attacks when you choose to flee from the entities. They're just gonna they're not gonna take a swipe at you as you run away. Well, brother might, but
Brother probably would,
brother
but
probably would.
just one strike.
I like this question from Thormoy again. Any suggestions for ways to enter the house the second and future times? I don't think my players would walk in the front door again. Well, the front door is not going to look the same.
Right. Well, I mean, so there are uh, effectively three different ways in the house. There's the front door, there's the back door, and then there's the window that out of the backyard. And so if you're putting the house in a setting that allows for all of those things, um, they have three different choices, and I would highly encourage you to give the players that agency, and really let them choose. Don't force them through a door or whatever. If it works in the context of your game. Um, but uh, you know, I've thought about this a little bit, especially in regard to my ongoing game that I'm doing right now, and I think that, like, when they return to the house, maybe the window in the family room is open, right? And they can crawl in through there, right? And then start in a sort of a non-traditional, non-starting place, right? You can basically, most of the rooms can be entry points, and also consider the idea that they're in a room that gets swallowed up by the house, right? And
Ooh.
they're just suddenly back there again, and you can put that room wherever you want, right? You can join that up in any place.
Mhm. I think so. A little bit of a clarification from our wonderful peanut gallery. Uh, um, Perhaps they're asking how, if they should need to return to the house, like how do you get them to go? Like they know that they have to go back into the house, but how do you? I think we kind of answered this in a previous question. But if they know that they need to go back to the house, but that door is just like they're scared to do it. I think
Oh,
we answered that question a little bit previously.
well, yeah, I mean, I guess in that case, having them sucked in a room or whatever, is a way you can do that. But I would also say, I don't know, this is me taking a step back, as sort of talking about GMing in general. If the players really don't want to go back, don't force them to go back. Even if it, like, is something that just kind of hangs over their head like a dark cloud, like, oh, we're gonna have to go back there sometime. Oh, but let's not do it now, right? That's fine, right? Players should have the ability to have their characters do what they want, you know, even if you really, really want to run the darkest
Hmm.
tower.
We've got another question from Terry, which is a very good question because I have not had a single player do this in any instance of running the darkest house that I have encountered. How do you demonstrate calling upon the house in game so that the characters know they can do that? Because we always go over it when discussing the rules of the darkest house, but they never remember.
So what I have done in that very specific case is, I make it almost like a whisper, right?
Mhm.
Like if let's say someone is trying to do a role, maybe they're fighting the Raven Dream guy, right? Which is really hard to do. And whatever, and they make an attack and they miss. They just kind of hear a whisper that just says, I can help you with that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
remember that the house, while it's not something that you can assign specific motives to the way you could a traditional NPC. The house is very much a living entity, and for whatever reason, it wants to impart its doom. It wants to sort of infect the world with its darkness, and getting people to call upon it. It's I mean, it's happy that when that happens, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
that's great. So, having whispers, having just kind of that feeling, having, that moment, like when they're, picking the lock or whatever, they're taking that action, and they're, you can tell them, okay, well, you can feel it's not working, and then you suddenly feel like this knowledge coming into your mind that
Mhm.
is just like, oh, I could do it this way, but I would have to, you know kind of make myself a little bit more in tune and establish a better connection with the house. And, if that doesn't sound scary, I don't know what does.
Yeah. We have both in chat and in the forums. I think this may have been the same person. Any suggestions on how to take a subset of the materials to create a one session, multi-hour one shot? We're talking longer than 4 hours.
I might just actually, here's what I would really I was going to say I would take like one aspect of like, just the pater section or the frater section or whatever. But if that's what you're going to do, um I would cherry pick. I would go through and pick your favorite rooms, and uh the nice thing is, with the app, with the index, you can just go back and, if you like wrote down on your own, like your own map, for example, right? And so you're like, okay, well, in my version of the smaller house, right, I'm just going to go, the dining room connects to, the kitchen and nothing else or whatever, right? You just make those notes, and you can use the index, with the room names, and make your own smaller darkest house, if you want to, if what you're after is an experience that will last multiple hours, but then has an end point. And then but make sure you have that end point be finding a way out of the house, which
Mhm.
can be, the doorman. It can be, making a painting in the gallery. It can be a lot of different things. Or you can just make up your own, right? Like if they can make their way to the attic, they can crawl out the window and get out, right? But
Mhm.
getting to the attic is an ordeal.
It's a really good way. All these there are many suggestions in chat now for ways to get your players into the house, if you're ways to get the characters into the house if the players are reluctant. Just make sure that whatever you're doing, you all agree as a group, because the players are we love to torture our characters. So just make sure that everybody is on board with it.
Right. The the characters should be really, really leery and scared and whatnot. The players should be having a good time. And if they're not, then, you know, do something else.
Let's see. One question from the forum. I'd like to hear your thoughts around the general higher difficulty of encounters when players are exploring the darkest house. I want to give my players a sense of fear in the darkest house with a certain risk reward element as they explore. But mainly, I don't want to make things too difficult to turn them off to really getting into character and enjoying the overall experience. Any tips that you might suggest?
Yeah. So, the encounters, the different rooms are set up so that you're going to encounter a lot of different kinds of things. Like, if they go down into the secret room, the one where there's like some animated corpses that come up out of the water, like those, they're zombies basically, right? And they're not very tough, right? Even a
Hmm.
moderately powerful group is going to be able to take care of them without much problem. But then some of the major entities, like if they actually get into a fight with like the I don't know, like the curator or the our is it the arbiter? Anyway,
You put
uh,
too many things in the house.
um, you know, they're super, super hard. And so the intention there is to give different kinds of experiences, not like it's not set up so that like all of the encounters are exactly the same, right? Some of them you just have to run. and some of them you can win by fighting, and whatnot. So what I would do is I would run the house as is, but kind of pay close attention. And if the house is providing, if the challenge of the house is just turning into like a lot of really hard combats, um, maybe adjust it, because that's not really the point. The point is, the mood and the character building and all the things that we've been talking about. And the nice thing is that with the house system, it's really, I mean, it's ridiculously easy to change things on the fly, right? If you're just discovering that, oh, rating six things are too hard, well, make it rating five or four or whatever, right? Or vice versa. It literally can just bump up the number one or two, or down one or two, and that's all you need to do. So um, I would be I would just be really open to that kind of on the fly modification, if if that's something that you're really interested in, and making sure that they have kind of a consistent feel.
Mhm. I'm answering the question in the chat. We got a what was your inspiration for the Darkest House? And um Katie Horror Show's Anatomy, Shirley Jackson's House on Haunted Hill, Betrayal at House on the Hill, Control, House of Leaves, all of those and more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're all in the bibliography there. Tried to. I mean, The Shining is a huge one. Um, and I'll use this moment to point out that uh, one of the rewards that we did for the Kickstarter was sort of like a director's commentary track, where it's a video of just me clicking through the house app and talking about the various rooms, and get a lot into different inspirations and where this thing came from and that thing came from, and why I thought that other thing was really scary. And so if you're looking for inspirations, that's a good uh, way to find out.
Yeah, and that video is on our YouTube channel. If someone would like to, if someone behind this behind the scenes would like to throw me the link, I can throw that up in chat, or someone else can throw that up in chat. Uh, or I can do it while Monty is talking again. I can find it. Um, Speaking of the arbiter who you mentioned in the previous question, we have another question. When playing as the arbiter, can the players ask to have him remove cursed items, or perhaps if they've sold their soul to get it back? What are the limits of his powers?
Oh, I would in that regard, of like, what he can offer if they're willing to really kind of give up everything. uh, I wouldn't put any hard limits on his power, simply because that just makes for a great narrative experience. It uh, Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't ever have the arbiter say, no, I can't do that. I would instead, just have him continually up his price. And, maybe it requires two souls or whatever, right? But I would, look at it this way, right? If you think of it as though like what you're giving him is part is powering him,
Hmm.
right? The more you give him, the more he can do.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. Oh no, I've gone blurry again.
Yes, you're it's like you're fading away, like you're being drawn into the house.
I'm not real.
We probably
Oh,
have time for maybe like one more question, do you think?
sure. Well, this one is really short, so I'm going to ask you this one, and then we'll ask a final one. So,
Okay.
from Lensman de Leoncourt, are there plans for a sequel?
I'm a never say never kind of person, but the house is pretty big. Uh, 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 if you play through all of the Darkest House and you still want more, let us know. And if enough people say that, um, I'd love to do more, right? And like with the Devoured Halls edition that we did, it wouldn't be hard to, kind of, you
Add
know,
more.
exactly.
Let's see. So I think for our last question, I'm gonna make it funny because I loved this question
Okay.
submitted earlier. You're Philip Harlock, aren't you? Philip sounds a lot like you.
Well, so I may or may not have recorded the audio for when in the Devoured Halls when you actually can hear Philip's voice. And you know when you look at Philip's journal, particularly at the first few entries where he's talking about how he never leaves his house and everything, if that doesn't speak to 2020, I don't know what will. There's
Yeah.
probably a little bit of me and my frustration at lockdown and COVID and everything. So yeah, I mean, in a way.
Very, very relatable. But yeah, we are coming up to the end of the hour, and that was a very fun hour of
Yeah,
questions and insights. That was really, really fun.
really good questions.
Yeah.
Really, really am happy and impressed with the questions. Sounds like the people asking these questions really get the Darkest House, and that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's something when you gave us the idea for this, like when you brought this to us, I was like, this is nothing I've ever, I mean, in a sense, yes, like I've done things like I've played things like Betrayal at House on the Hill and the I've seen Anatomy played, I've seen Control played, but like you've taken those experiences and kind of put them into something that is really unique. And I was so very excited to be a part of the team that put that together. So
Oh, thank
thank
you.
you for birthing the Darkest House and scaring the pants out of all of us.
Well, we are thrilled to have you a part of that team, LaTia. So
Yeah.
right back at you.
Excellent. So that has been our Q&A and seminar and GM tips on the Darkest House. I have been LaTia Jacquise. Again, I am the Community Relations Coordinator for MCG. Um, this has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your support on the Kickstarter and your great questions and everything. We love you guys.
Yeah, we love you so much. All of you out there, as well as the 3,000 plus backers who helped make this both game and seminar a reality. We thank you so much. And until next time, uh, the house hates you.
The house hates you.
The house hates you. Bye, everybody.